In 2022, companies looked at generative AI and saw an irresistible math equation. For a fraction of the cost of a single employee, these models promised to instantly generate code, craft hyper-realistic images, and execute complex workflows that usually took entire teams. The corporate response was immediate. Across Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, and Salesforce, executives cut tens of thousands of jobs, eagerly replacing software engineers and copywriters with algorithms that never slept and never asked for a raise. This corporate purge quickly spilled out of Silicon Valley and into everyday life. Major fast food chains announced plans to automate hundreds of drive-thrus, swapping the person handing you your food for an AI voice assistant. Across almost every industry, the global workforce seemed destined for a continuous, frictionless transition into an era where computational labor would always win out on price. But over the last few months, that transition has violently stalled out. Microsoft recently issued an internal memo banning its own engineers from using certain third-party AI coding tools, and Meta is aggressively pulling back on its external AI usage. The reason isn't a drop in quality, it's a sudden, massive spike in price. Routine interactions with these models are chewing through entire annual enterprise budgets in a matter of weeks. The exact software companies deployed to slash their operating costs has mutated into their heaviest financial burden. And to understand why, corporate finance departments are having to look closely at how artificial intelligence actually bills its users. This diagram illustrates how AI models charge for their services. When you prompt an AI, it doesn't read words. It processes that text in chunks called tokens. Each token carries a tiny microcent price tag. Generating a few paragraphs of text might only cost a fraction of a penny. But if an average employee spends $200 a week on tokens, that's roughly $10,000 a year. Multiply that across a corporate workforce of 40,000 people, and suddenly you are looking at a $400 million operating expense. For a multinational corporation, financial stability is now tightly bound to how casually their employees burn through this invisible digital currency. And human employees started burning through them on purpose. Terrified by the initial wave of layoffs, engineers realized that their managers were tracking AI usage. Using massive amounts of tokens quickly became a bizarre status symbol, a way to mathematically prove how productive you were. This practice, known as token maxing, was actively encouraged by top hardware leaders and executives. Workers began using AI to automate completely insignificant tasks, desperately inflating their token counts to survive performance reviews. This desperate scramble by humans to prove their worth created a massive artificial spike in overall AI demand. The software numbers looked like infinite exponential growth, but they were rapidly approaching a very hard physical limit. Looking at these inflated reader boards, executives at Amazon and other cloud providers assumed the demand was entirely genuine. They immediately committed to building sprawling physical data centers to house the necessary computing power. But algorithms require microchips, and the global supply chain couldn't keep up. Severe shortages in electronic components have forced nearly half of all planned data center construction in the US for 2026 to be outright canceled or delayed. Here is the direct economic result of that physical bottleneck. This chart tracks the average cost of tokens for large language models. Between late 2025 and May 2026, the price nearly doubled from $1.12 to $2.12 per million tokens, and that line is going to keep climbing. Leading AI firms have actually been absorbing massive losses to keep their services relatively cheap. But with public IPOs approaching, they have to answer to shareholders, which means they will be forced to raise prices to finally show a profit. The era of heavily subsidized, dirt-cheap artificial intelligence is over. Enterprise companies are waking up to the true, unsubsidized cost of running these models, and the illusion of infinite computing power has officially broken. Finance departments are now staring at a very pragmatic equation. They are literally weighing the escalating, compounding costs of an AI token burn rate against the predictable salary of a human employee. The return on investment varies drastically by the job. For raw software coding, paying for AI compute is still undeniably cheaper. But for data entry tasks, rising token costs have erased the algorithm's financial advantage, bringing the scales to an exact tie. Then you look at complex, time-intensive roles like call center operations. Maintaining an active, responsive AI model for an hours-long customer service queue is now tangibly more expensive than simply hiring a human being to take the call. Artificial intelligence relies on strict, unforgiving physical constraints. It is bound by the supply of raw silicon, the profit margins of cloud providers, and the unpredictable psychology of the humans using it. Flesh and blood workers are making a comeback in the corporate budget, but not out of a sudden sense of empathy. The economics of the AI bubble burst, and right now, humans are the better investment.